Okay, thanks. Roberto.
Yeah, can I have my slide, please? First of all, thanks a lot for kind invitations with such a great faculty in bladder cancer. For me, that I'm not an expert in bladder cancer. I'm coming from the urological field, but I like the academic work, so I like this to speak about the potentiality of this test. And I try to convince you on using this test in other settings. So what is this? This is probably most of you knows, is the first release Victorinox knives designed for the Swiss soldiers in the late 19th century. And this is a single object, portable, with a lot of functions. And the last release is the Giant. It's a single object with more than 140 different functions in order to use in different settings. So the question is, what's the relation between this tool and the Bladder EpiCheck? Is this the case? Due to the characteristics, the intrinsic characteristic of this test, may we use this test in other setting? And I try to convince you to use in different settings. Which characteristics? Two, the biomarkers identification process that's behind this test, and the final panel construction process that's behind this test. So they look all the genome in order to find genes or markers that able to differentiate sick and healthy population. Not including only genes known to be related to cancer evolutions. This approach allows for identification of unknown and novel markers. And then they need to put together all these interesting markers in order to build the final panel. And not only considering the best marker with the best performance, with the high sensitivity, high specificity value, but also the markers that add something to the best markers, without having markers that overlaps one each other. So as a football, I used to play football since 30 years, and as a trainee of football team, imagine you are a trainee of your national soccer team. What do you prefer? You prefer this team with a lot of, probably the best player ever, a lot of masters, or you prefer this team with the mix of class, a mix of running, a mix of physicalness, a mix of intelligence? I have no doubt in my mind as a trainee of a football team, but I leave you your choice. So, which are the potential uses of Bladder EpiCheck in my mind? And I want to share with you my personal thinking on this topic. Steve Jobs said 20 years ago, think different. And I think the real academic work is to think different, to think and to reply to clinical questions in a scientific way. So imagine three different scenarios. Patients with high-risk bladder cancer after TURB that needs a re-TURB according to guidelines. This is probably one of the few cases of 2 operations to reach the aim, a distance of 4-6 weeks one each other. So is it really necessary to do a re-TURB? Second scenario is a patient with a suspicious of upper tract urothelial cancer. It needs selective cytology. It needs biopsies. And sometimes, most of the times, they are not conclusive. So may we use something to improve diagnostic performance and have prognostic informations. And the third scenario is asymptomatic patients coming to your office with a urine examination showing microhematuria. Are we sure that all of these patients need cystoscopy or upper tract imaging, or we can select patients for further urological evaluation? So coming back to the first scenarios, the EU guideline says the absence of detrusor muscle in the specimen is associated with a significant high risk of residual disease, and a second TURB can detect residual tumors, increase recurrence-free survival, and provide prognostic information. And if you compare all the guidelines together, you can see that there are minimal difference between each other. Re-TURB is indicated in case of suspicion of incomplete initial TURB, if no muscle is present at initial TURB, for all T1 cancer and for all high-grade cancer. And if you look at all the systematic and review and meta-analysis, this is one of the last release on European urology focus in January 2018, you can see the extreme variability in the prevalence of residual tumor according to all of these studies. It varies from 20% to 90%, and it's due to a lot of factors that I don't want to underline now. But if you look at this very, very last systematic review with the two of the authors on this stage today, they state that residual tumor is common after TUR for high-risk non-muscle invasive bladder cancer, but the quality of evidence is weak. And what is clear is that there is an unmet need for a large multi-center prospective intention to treat randomized controlled trial on re-TURB for TA and T1 tumors. So the problem exists. So this is the reason why I designed a pivotal multi-center study, start recruiting on January 2018 with 3 centers in Italy and 2 different labs working on bladder EpiCheck, with Professor Popiglia and Professor Tubero join us in this study. What's the hypothesis behind these studies? Patients with histology-proven superficial high-risk bladder cancer after TURB and positive EpiScore at bladder EpiCheck test before TURB will have negative EpiScore at bladder EpiCheck test before re-TURB if they are cancer-free at re-TURB. So it's quite it's difficult to understand, but it's very, very simple. So patient with a positive EpiScore before TURB with high risk that needs re-TURB will have negative EpiScore if they are cancer-free at re-TURB. So the objective of the study is diagnostic performance of bladder EpiCheck and its correlation with the re-TURB result, and the secondary objective is to study the EpiScore variation before TURBT, after TURBT, 15 days after, and before re-TURB. So this is the flow chart of the study. We enrolled patients with suspected bladder cancer after cystoscopy. They have the TURB. Patients with low intermediate risk or muscle invasive of negative histology excluded from the study, and patients who tested negative, the EpiCheck tests are excluded from the study. All the other patients continue the study, and they collect urine after 15 days after the TURB, and just before re-TURB, they have re-TURB in 4-6 weeks according to guidelines, and then we analyze the statistics. So the results are expected in Q3 2018, but this is only an example. This is the first patient enrolled, the first patient completed the study. So he had a tremendous drop after the initial TURB that diagnosed a T1 high grade with muscle present and complete TURB. They have a dramatic drop of the EpiScore just 15 days after TURB, and another drop in just before RE2RB, and the RE2RB was negative. So this is only an example of my thinking about this, the use of bladder EpiCheck in this scenario. So moving to the second scenarios, patient with suspicious of upper tract urothelial cancer. Looking at your guideline again, urine cytology is the only test accepted during the diagnosis and during the follow-up of patient with a suspicious of upper tract urothelial cancer. And we know that we need to collect the urine from the upper tract because the performance of the urine markers is absolutely better in this case. You see the cytology performance is a 74 sensitivity, 66 specificity, just better than to collect collecting the urine from the bladder. The same is for fish. MP22 has the same problem with high sensitivity and very low specificity. So coming back to EpiCheck panel, we know that we have 15 methylation markers in this test. And we know that methylation markers could have a diagnostic prognostic impact in patients with the bladder cancer, with urothelial cancer. So in this review article, they state that DNA methylation is significantly associated with the advanced stage, high rates of tumor progression. Thus, methylation status may be useful as a prognostic marker of bladder cancer. And the methylation markers are more sensitive than cytology in bladder cancer, and only highly selective panel of methylation marker will increase the sensitivity and specificity of urine analysis in the clinic. So my thinking is, can we use this test in these scenarios? The third scenario is patient with asymptomatic patient coming to your office with the urine test showing microhematuria. If you look at the guidelines, the AUA guidelines on evaluation, follow-up of asymptomatic microhematuria, they state that all the patient needs cystoscopy and upper tract imaging in this case. No cytology, no urine markers in the guideline, but there is a high risk of imaging using CT scan in this patient, and the cost of this patient are tremendous high. And the AUA guideline conclusion was that we need strategies to avoid full investigation in all these patients. And this might involve investigation of urine-based tests that could have a high enough sensitivity that the negative test might avert unnecessary invasive and radiological evaluation. So this test, you know from the multi-center study, you know from the Professor Shariat's talk, these tests have a high negative predictive value, so probably could be used in these scenarios. So in conclusion, due to its intrinsic characteristics and performance, blood EpiCheck is a test potentially applied to different clinical settings. Result of pivotal study EPIC-1 will be expected in 6 months to assess the role in avoiding RE2RB, and other potential application will be investigated soon. And if you are agreed to participate in these new settings, I'm quite satisfied. Thank you very much for your attention.